if you look at the agenda, you'll see that in addition to doing today's welcome, I'm also today's keynote speaker. So I'm pulling double duty. I thought it'd be really cool as I transition from sort of the, hey, welcome everybody, to the keynote address, if I did a costume change. So with that, I'm going to do a Zoom style costume change. Let me see if this works here. Boom. Change my background to California poppies. I'm glad to show people different pictures of California. There's lots to choose from. I'm originally from California. This is where I was born and raised. By way of background, I'm the youngest of 3 kids. I'm the only boy, and I come from a Latino family, which is actually a very good get. I was diagnosed with muscular dystrophy as a child. At the time of my diagnosis, my doctor said I would die in adolescence. He said I wouldn't finish high school, and that even if I lived, college would be an impossibility. My mother, however, saw things differently. She then spent every day that followed telling me in no uncertain terms that I, in fact, would do well in high school, that I would graduate from college, and that I would have a career. Turns out, even though she lacks a medical degree, she was right. And yet, I have to say that there were times, many times, growing up, when it was difficult for me to believe her words, because there's a lack of disability representation. The thing is, when you grow up and you don't see people like you doing the things that you dream of doing, it can feel like those things are beyond your reach. After high school, I went out of state to college. And following my graduation from college, I moved back to California and I enrolled in an MBA program. During my very first semester, I had to take advanced accounting, which I was less than thrilled about doing. To make matters worse, it was a night class. It was on the 3rd floor in the middle of a building in the middle of campus, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Our first class actually ran long, which was brutal. I left the classroom, I was exhausted. I beelined it to the elevator, pushed the button, but it didn't light up. I tapped it again. Still no light. And that was when I realized it was going to be a long night. The elevator, which had broken down while I was in class, was the only one in the building. So I made a call. Enter the fire department, who, though they had never rescued someone in a wheelchair from a non-burning academic building, said they were willing to give it a shot. I'll never forget when the first firefighter saw me. He looked at me, checked out my wheelchair, pulled out his radio, pushed the button, and said, "We're going to need more guys." Look, I get it. My power wheelchair is heavy, but I got to admit, I didn't care for the insinuation. Before long, a crew of 6 firefighters were on scene. They were running a series of straps through and around my wheelchair. Once they finished rigging up their rudimentary pulley system, it was go time. I had 2 firefighters in front of me, 2 behind, and another on each side. Basically, half of that year's firefighter calendar was ready to hoist me down the stairs. 1, 2, 3, and lift. You would not believe how tight things get when you squeeze 6 firefighters, a power wheelchair, and me into a narrow stairwell. The flights weren't excessively long, but given the circumstances, it felt like descending a Jacob's ladder. About halfway down, when they were huffing and puffing and covered with sweat, I said, to no one in particular, "So I'm guessing this wasn't covered in your training?" I don't think I've ever heard people laugh so hard. But no, they said, this was definitely not covered in the training. It took about an hour and a half, but eventually we made it to the bottom. Longest first day of school ever. So you can imagine when I went back to class on Wednesday night, I was pretty nervous. I checked the elevator twice. It was working. I made my way to accounting, listened to the lecture. Thankfully, it ended on time. I worked my way after class down the hall to the elevator, where I slowly crawled my hand up the wall and pressed the button. It didn't light up. I could not believe it. The elevator had broken down again. So I called the same number, and the same firefighters arrived on scene. And we took a minute and just stared at each other. At that point, I felt like we were brothers in arms, or straps, I guess, as it were. Looking at my new friends, I asked, "Once more into the breach?" We had a good laugh. And then, just as we had done before, enter the straps, everyone get into position. 1, 2, 3, lift. And away we went. This time, we made it to the bottom in 45 minutes, half the time. So there's something to be said about practice. I thanked everyone for their hard work, went home, logged onto my computer, and dropped the class. I did 2 semesters in that program, and then took a break to get more work experience. I moved to Washington, D.C. for what was supposed to be a 3-month internship with a member of Congress. A month into that internship, I was offered a full-time position. My thinking at the time was that I'd stay in DC for a year. Somehow I blinked, and 13 years had passed. In that time, I'd worked for 2 different members of Congress, handling Homeland Security and emergency management issues. I completed a master's degree, not in business, but in Homeland Security. I directed security policy at a national trade association, then became a principal at a ranked Homeland Security and emergency management consulting firm. Best of all, I met, courted, and married the love of my life, and we had 2 children. But throughout those years, I noticed 2 very troubling and recurring themes. One was that, and this was all in the Homeland Security Emergency Management work I did. One was that without exception, disasters disproportionately impact individuals with disabilities and anyone with an access or functional need. The second was that those same individuals, the ones that were disproportionately impacted, were left out of the emergency management process. This sobering reality created a divide between the community and emergency managers. Emergency managers, as very well-intentioned as they were planning for people with access and functional needs instead of with them. They developed plans to prepare, respond, and recover, but they were doing it in isolation without the benefit of including people who had lived experiences from the whole community in the process. This created fundamental gaps throughout the emergency management system. Those gaps were measured by loss of life and increased human suffering. When I roll into a room, whether it's for a birthday party or work or church or whatever, I'm automatically, maybe even at a subconscious level, scanning that room for access. Are there steps? Is there a ramp? It's all about access. But if you walk into that room, chances are you're not looking for any of those things. And that's okay. It's not that one is good and the other is bad. It just simply means that based on our lived experiences, we look at the same thing and see it differently. It's perspective. In order to develop meaningful solutions that address the most complex, devastating disasters we face, which is exactly what we're up against right now, emergency managers must recruit, enlist, and partner with people who have access and functional needs and ensure that the whole community is represented at the table. We have to be at the planning table. The other way didn't work. One of the essential primary elements of emergency management is an unwavering commitment to providing equitable, accessible, quality service to every individual impacted by disaster, including people with access and functional needs. It's why we're all here today. Individually, we're good people trying to do good things. But together, we're more than the sum of our parts. Together, we're capable of achieving extraordinary things. We can move the needle on this mission in a meaningful way. We can integrate our emergency management systems to reduce human suffering and the loss of life. We can inform and empower. We can integrate in a way that enables individuals to be safe, secure, and independent. We can further preparedness while building resilience. We can promote health and further dignity. Together, we can achieve an equitable emergency management system for all. When we plan together, the communities we serve do better. This symposium is historic. It marks the first time we've come together from across the country, unified by a singular mission to integrate access and functional needs throughout the emergency management system. I am honored to join you in this moment. I'm honored to partner with you on this mission. And I'm honored to lift with you. Because when you lift, and our stakeholders lift, our communities ascend. So thank you. Thank you for being here. I appreciate everyone.